In today's video, we're going to talk all about your venue's DNA, and we are going to fully unravel this. Get it? Unravel DNA? Okay, dad jokes aside, my name is Jonathan, and I am all about making a change for the better. You're going to hear that a lot from me on this show, the Venue RX, as well as WEVA, our venue association, and inside my business, Common Sense Events, which manages venues professionally. In today's video, we're going to be talking about your venue's DNA, and this is a great video to watch if you are just starting your venue journey. Maybe you are a DJ or planner or photographer and you really want to get into the venue space, and you're now scouting locations and you're thinking about everything that you'd want to include in your venue. Maybe you're thinking of buying an existing venue, right? This is a great place to start. Now, the other audience that I'm intending this video for is if you are a new venue owner and you are maybe in your first, second, third year of business. You maybe quite haven't figured out your unique selling proposition, or USP as the fancy people like to call it. But we're going to be breaking that down today, and I'm going to be giving you a very simple 10-step process to help you unpack what your venue DNA is and how you can effectively use it to create a unique selling proposition that actually helps you book more weddings and run smoother operations. So just like your unique human DNA is kind of that unique footprint that you have, that genetic footprint you have, your venue's DNA, or VDNA as we're going to be calling it in this video, is the unique footprint that your venue has. Now, why this video is for new venue owners and for venue owner hopefuls, and then maybe if you're in your first or second year, maybe third year, is you may have not understood yet your unique selling proposition. You might struggle to stand out in a competitive market. You might really be having a difficult time understanding what your footprint is, what your business footprint is as a venue. And if you don't figure out this footprint, it can result in really frustrating operations, not being able to hire the right team members. Your sales may be struggling, right? There may be so many different headaches that you're going to encounter because you don't have your VDNA really solid, down pat. And that's what we're going to work on today. At the end of this, well, you should be able to understand, okay, this is how I am unique in these 10 different areas. And if you haven't opened your venue yet and you're looking to start a venue, you can basically take this checklist and match it to what you would really like to do, and then also match it to what's happening in your market to see if there really is a need for the thing that you're inspired about, the thing that you're really passionate about. Is there a need for that in your market, or are you going to end up just being kind of a lookalike to other venues in your area, or maybe there's not the audience that you really had hoped for, and so, to do the venue where you're thinking of doing it may not be a good idea. You might need to look for another location. If you don't have some of these pieces firmly locked in the very beginning, it's very difficult, very expensive to change them. Now, on the bright side, 5 of them are things that you can change very quickly, sometimes even within a month, couple weeks, things like that. So from that perspective, let's jump right into it and break down what are the 10 different pieces of your VDNA, or venue's DNA. So the first piece of your venue DNA, or VDNA, is your location and setting. Now, this is all the physical stuff, right? This is, are you urban? Are you rural? Are you near a mountainous area? Are there streams and rivers and ponds? Are you more of a beach setting, right? Are you near a major city, near a major international airport, or not, right? All about the physical setting of the area around you. The other component here is the seasonal aspect, advantages or disadvantages that come with the seasonal aspect of where your venue is located. This might be extreme winters. This might be very temperate winters, right? Depending on where you are in the country. The other piece here is accessibility. Is it very easy to get to? Do you have to travel off of a dirt road to get to the venue? Is it a hike, a climb? Is it kind of more of an adventurous style venue? Or is it something that is super accessible, ADA parking spots everywhere, plenty of parking? You could be in a downtown urban environment where there's absolutely no parking and you have to use, valet and different other parking methods like that. So all of this is the physical setting that goes into that first component, the location. The second piece of your venue's DNA is the architectural features. So this plays a huge role in what people are looking for. Spaces, whether it's a barn, whether it's more of an urban loft, whether it's a ranch, whether it's a farm, winery, whether it is a chapel, regardless of the type, all of these are design features and design elements that go into what people are searching for. And this is probably one of the top key features that you see when you look at those online directories. They're going to be filtering by, what type of design, what type of style. And this is huge. This is probably one of the biggest choices that you can make, or biggest pieces that you can evaluate as a venue owner. And your unique selling proposition, or USP, through this whole process is your design style. Now, the other piece of this is any special structures that you may have on site. So So like a gazebo, maybe a special rooftop area, a specific view, maybe it's vines, maybe it's, some unique, really cool structure that other venues may not have on property. So any special structures. The other piece here when it comes to architecture is the room capacities, the room layouts, the room design. Is it more of a rectangle? Is it a square? Are there multiple buildings that are all close to each other? Do they all connect? Is it one big room, right? Do you have to have a room flip? All these things when it comes to the design and again, building into the architecture, build into what your USP is and what your venue DNA is. The last piece with that venue DNA and is renovation history. Is it a historic property that was renovated? Did you renovate it? Is it something that has some historical or cultural relevance in the area? We've had so many venue owners here on the show in the Venue RX that have renovated some incredible spaces and brought them to life. Churches, for example, bank vaults, historic areas in their towns. And this, I think, is a really cool, timeless way to kind of renew a space and breathe new life into it in a way that can be timeless and really can, stand the test of time and not go in and out of fads. Now, fads are a little bit tricky here. I think barns, churches had a huge moment. Barns, kind of that white barn style, really had a moment. Those are getting less popular, although they still are very popular. They, I think, are a staple of wedding culture, and I think they always will have a place. Now, maybe they're not in vogue as much as they used to be, but I think they will always have a place. And when you think about a barn, you could have something that's maybe very modern farmhouse barn, or you could have something that's very rustic barn, right? So there's a huge layer of difference between even just in the barn category. And that's going to really make a difference in how you position yourself in the market. All right, the third part of your venue DNA is any amenities or features you may have on the property. I actually recently visited a property that had some incredible projection mapping, and basically they could turn the entire venue into anything. I mean, you could be inside of a fishbowl, you could be inside of this really brilliant, lit up, sparkly, like winter wonderland. You could be inside of a Christmas scene. I mean, there's so many different things. They had 300 or 400 different scenes, and they projected them onto the walls, and you felt like you were in a completely different reality. It was wild. It was so crazy. But that would be an example of a unique amenity or feature. Other things like that are AV. Maybe you've spent extra money putting in, sound equipment. Maybe you have projections. Maybe it's, something really more set up for corporate stuff. So the amenities fit more of a corporate client. Maybe you have those amenities where other venues don't. The other key piece here when it comes to amenities and offerings are things like bridal suite, groom suite, couple getting ready areas, overnight accommodations, all of this stuff. Some of that goes with the architectural design, but really it's less of that and more of these amenities that are offered on site. So especially with the overnight accommodations, your ability or not to have overnight guests, maybe weekend events, that definitely builds into a certain style of wedding or style of an event that you can host. And the last piece here as well is catering facilities, warming kitchens, operational spaces that allow vendors to come in and give them more freedom and flexibility to create truly custom events. When you have a space that maybe is just a blank canvas and it can be converted if it doesn't have a catering kitchen or if it doesn't have other areas that allow vendors to come in and set everything up, it can be very difficult. And so it would lend itself to be as custom. It will really maybe even hurt your opportunities to have more custom events, because even though you are a blank canvas, you kind of have this space that can be transformed. You don't have some of these amenities, some of these additional facilities that are needed to help vendors through the space. So that's something to consider. The fourth element of your venue's DNA is the history and storytelling that you may have behind it. So basically, if you have something that maybe a space that you've renovated, maybe it is a bank vault, or maybe it is a historic mansion, or maybe it is some historic landmark. The cool thing about this is you can showcase the story and you can tell the story of maybe incredible events that have happened there before, historic things that have happened, and you're going to attract a client and get a client who's really interested in and who thinks that's really cool and really neat. And maybe you've been able to modernize the space a little bit, but it still has those historic features. And so that is going to be a key component of how you sell the space. You're going to talk about the history. You're going to talk about the cultural significance. You're going to talk about the past history and past events and notable things that happen there. And that's going to create a huge uniqueness versus a place even right down the road that's maybe very similar, but it doesn't have that same historical anchor. The fifth piece of venue DNA is your operational philosophy. And this is where things get really fun because you can start customizing and really making a space serve a specific audience. Now, what do I mean by this? You have to break down the type of weddings and the type of events you want to serve. And this is very important. Thinking about your operational philosophy when it comes to the space, you've got to decide, do you want to be super flexible or do you want to be more cookie cutter? What I mean by this is when you look at the space, do you want to designate, hey, this is where we're going to have our ceremonies. This is the direction that we're going to have this ceremony faced. This is how we're going to have people have their receptions. This is where they're going to do the cocktail hour, right? That's more of an operational philosophy around more rigid guidelines. Or do you want to have a space that is super flexible? You know, they can do the cocktail hour wherever they want. They can do the ceremony wherever they want. Maybe there's beautiful areas all over the property and they can pick one of 3 or 4 different locations for the ceremony, and then you've got a couple of options for reception. Maybe it's just one location and you're flipping the space, right? So operational philosophy comes into play very early on, especially if you're building it or even if you're buying it and you want something that's very flexible. You're going to be looking for a certain type of building, or you're going to be building a certain type of building to be able to accommodate that flexibility. Now, the other piece of this is the customer service and the specialization. So do you want to serve a certain cultural niche of audience? Do you want to go after South Asian weddings? South Asian weddings typically have much larger guest counts, right? Do you want to serve smaller weddings? Do you want to give a really highly personalized experience with tons of flexibility and, you know, it's really like this big creative canvas that the client can do whatever they want in? Or do you want to have a more curated package options where there's not a lot of variety, right? A lot of this comes down to your operational philosophy and ethos. The other piece here to think about that actually really does have a physical component is the event flow. What do you want the event flow to look like? Do you want to be able to accommodate many weddings per week, many weddings per month? Do you want to focus more on these destination weddings? Do you want to focus on more wedding weekends? This plays such a huge role because if you have a venue that is more catered towards a wedding weekend package option, you're going to end up getting a space that may not be well suited to do volume. And so if your pricing model is more of a volume pricing model where you really, to be profitable, or maybe the financing you're getting, really to be profitable, you have to be doing 3 or 4 weddings per week at, let's say, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. That's going to be very, very different than, you know, hosting one wedding per weekend and having people stay on site and kind of make a whole experience about it. Those are 2 very uniquely different properties. That impacts everything though, from the financing you're able to get, the pro forma that you're going to have. Those things are hugely impactful. And it's really important to think about that early on and think about that in terms of the financing that you're going to try to get. If you take out a, $5 million loan, let's say, and you have to crank 100 weddings a year out of a property, you may not be able to do that with a certain type of property. The 6th piece is the revenue generating capability that you have at the property. So this comes down to everything from packages to being able to offer bar. Do you want to do catering in bar? Do you want to not do catering in bar and count on vendors for that? The other piece here is decor. Do you want to have a large decor closet? Do you want to allow people to bring all of that stuff in, or do you want to have it on site for them? To do that, you're of course going to have a lot of storage, and you're going to have to think about storage and maintenance and all of that. So that's going to radically change maybe even some of the structure of the building or the place that you're looking for, because you're going to need to make sure that if you want a large rental inventory, you've got the storage space, you've got maybe it air conditioned depending on where you are in the country, or heated, and then you're able to quickly take those pieces, set them up, tear them down, move things around, especially if you have back-to-back weddings. And I said we're getting into some of the fun ones here. The 7th piece is your brand identity. So this can be done really regardless of the style of property that you have. Your brand identity, I believe, is really an extension of who you are and the type of client you want to work with, and maybe something unique about that client avatar that you love and you know very well, and so you know that you can serve them. When I hear people talk about doing luxury weddings, you have to understand that luxury market. You have to understand where they shop. You have to understand the value that they're looking for. You have to understand not just like, hey, I want a client that's going to spend $20, $30, $50,000, $100,000, $300,000. It's not as simple as that. It is, do you understand their motivations? Do you understand what they're looking for on an event? Do you understand what it should feel like, what the buying process should look like, all those things. So that's more for a luxury client, right? That comes into your brand identity. Do you want to be really rustic, right? Do you want to be very family oriented? Do you want to be very corporate? All of these things are brand identity. It's so much more than just your logo and your fonts and your icon and some of these different things. It's really important to know that if you're going to change your brand identity and you don't have a space that, say, for example, is going to fit more of a corporate approach, and you want to change your brand identity to be a little bit more corporate, but the space lends itself to be more of a family-oriented owner-operator style venue, you might struggle and you might have some friction creating that change. So that's one of the things where I think the best venues, there's some synergy between the venue layout and the property itself. I think that you can do a variety of properties a variety of ways. You don't have to have a farm venue or an estate venue that has a family feel, that is run by 3 generations of people, although many times that is what happens. You have someone who has a piece of property and it's been in their family for 8, 9 generations, and they want to build a wedding venue on it because someone in the family got married, they got all the permits and everything they needed, they built a venue, and now it's being used. And I think that story is played out many, many times all over the Midwest, the South. I've talked to many venue owners who are in that position, but that's not the case across the board, right? Just understand, if you do have one of those venues, that you may be in a position where it's harder to bring in more of a corporate environment, or it's hard to step out of the day-to-day. So if you do have a structure and you do have a brand identity and you do have a building and facility that requires a very high touch team, that is going to limit and that is going to give you some direction on the type of people that you hire, the type of messaging that you have, the type of communication you have with couples, things like that. And really what it comes down to is the advice that you're taking, because selling a venue, the sales proposition, the way that you sell that venue that has more of that family, a lot of love, a lot of care, is going to be very different than, say, getting married at a golf course or a hotel or an event center in the downtown area. It's not that there's any less love. It's just going to look a little bit different how you portray that and how you convey that, the team members you hire, et cetera, et cetera. There's so much that goes into it. So understanding those two things and understanding kind of the challenges that you might have to face if you want to go one direction or another is really important before you start, or even kind of understanding that in reverse. If you've already are in a property and you're like, oh gosh, I didn't realize that this was going to be happening. You know, it's something to realize, something to acknowledge, and then something to kind of build into your unique selling proposition. Number 8 is the competitive differentiators that you have. Now, this really is your unique selling proposition, and your USP is actually part of your DNA, but your unique selling proposition is composed of all of these other features that we talked about. Now, when you really boil it down, it's a very, I think, thorough understanding of who you are and who you serve best. And this could be a luxury client, this could be a budget client, this could be a couple that's looking for something that was very relaxed. This is something that maybe is very personal and intimate. You're working with the family, you're working with the owner, operator, right? Or this could be something that's a little bit more transactional, and we're just doing a stop here before we head out on our honeymoon, and you're in a downtown urban setting. There is a huge variety when it comes to the unique selling propositions, but like really understanding this is super important. So things like, do you get exclusive use of the property or not? Or are you one of 2 or 3 weddings that are happening that day? Maybe are there iconic photo spots or things that are just like really set you apart? Maybe there's partnerships with iconic vendors or vendors in your area. Maybe those are caterers, maybe those are rental companies that do a very specific job and they are well known. I know different areas have, different caterers that are there and they have larger presences than others. Maybe the event community is a little bit more developed than others. So understanding that and understanding how your facility uniquely lines up with partnering with some of those folks, or the use that you have of the property, or whether it is a target audience of a luxury couple versus more affordable. One thing I have found when it comes to pricing, I feel like the middle is always going to be there. There's always going to be the couple that wants to spend between $25,000 and let's call it $45,000. And that kind of feels like the middle of the market. Then of course there are going to be tons of budget couples that are just trying to get married as quickly and inexpensively as possible. And then there will always be those luxury clientele. The luxury clientele, you have to be really a very unique venue and a unique operation to successfully execute those again and again and again. And those are a very, very, very small percentage of the market. So it's really important to know if you are going after that luxury market, you can't just say, hey, we're going to charge more and they're going to show up. That's not how it works. You really need to have a deep and unique understanding of what that's going to take. And to do that, you might want to reach out to DMCs, luxury planners. You might want to reach out to photographers, really high-end photographers, to understand what are vendors looking for, what are planners looking for, what are these clients looking for that bring big budget weddings, 100K and above. What are they looking for? And how can you build or buy a venue that suits their needs versus, again, just hoping that you can charge a little more than everyone else to capture those higher paying clients. Number 9 is your internal operations, your team, your staff, the logistics that you have on the property. Is it super easy? Is it difficult? Load in, load out, things like that. Your internal operations, like how you keep things running on the inside. Your professionalism of your staff. Maybe you've been around for a really long time. Maybe you're connected to a hotel. Maybe you're connected to a golf course. Maybe you're connected to a museum. Maybe you're able to quickly iterate and innovate in response to changing trends because of the environment that you're in. And maybe you're in a city center that's constantly evolving, and so you're constantly throwing new and brilliant, colorful events. You're partnering with floral designers, and you're partnering with planners and coordinators, and you're doing all this different stuff. Maybe that's the case, or maybe you're one of 4 or 5 venues within 80 miles of you, and it's much slower. It's a more compressed market. It's a bit more calm, right? Those two pieces when it comes to internal operations really make a huge difference in how you sell the space. And the advice that you listen to, the hiring advice, the compensation advice, the marketing that you do, the branding, all of your website messaging, like all of that relates down to this internal operations component as well. The final element of your venue's DNA is the emotional connection that you're able to make on property. And this one's huge. And the good news on this one is you can do this regardless of your property. You can do this regardless of where you're located or any of the other elements of your venue's DNA. You can create an emotional connection, but the emotional connection you create is going to be very, very different depending on who you are, the position that you're coming from, if you manage the venue, if you own the venue, if you're maybe a second or third generation owner versus the original owner. My company, for example, we go and we hire employees, salespeople, venue people to go and take care of the venues. And so we sell the property a very, very different way than the property would be sold if it was being completely operated by the owner. And now I own a venue as well. And so how we sell that property is very, very different than how we sell other properties we're managing, or maybe where we have a relationship and an affiliation with a city or the military or whatever, right? And the selling position that we're coming from is very different. The memories though that are made, right? Maybe the staff members, how we treat people, maybe our ethos on site, that goes into like how you make people feel, And that's the most important part of this last piece here, the emotional connection piece, is how you make people feel when you show up. And that I think can be very unique and very special. And if you're able to showcase that, and if you're able to have that show up in reviews, that is another key element that will separate you and distance you from the competition area. So I hope these 10 pieces of your venue DNA are helpful to kind of analyze maybe a purchase that you're thinking about making. Maybe it's a build that you're thinking about doing. Maybe you're already in the industry and you really need to sharpen these things, because your understanding of your unique selling proposition, your USP, is going to be the key to success. There is a huge difference between talking to a lead that doesn't understand your USP and may not even be interested in your USP and maybe has different priorities, and you're going heavy on the emotional connection and you're going heavy on, some competitive differentiators. Maybe you're trying to serve a certain culture or certain audience, or maybe luxury weddings, or maybe more affordable weddings, whatever the case may be, and they may just totally miss it. They may miss your value proposition. What ends up happening when you have a client, a lead especially, who doesn't understand your value proposition, maybe because you haven't communicated it clearly, or maybe they just don't care, is you end up having a lot of friction with them. You end up having people that are very difficult to deal with. You end up making all of the rules, and you have all the signatures, and you have the long contract, because those clients take the most work because they don't understand what you're trying to do, and they don't love what you're trying to do to the extent that a client that understands your USP more would have. And so I've seen that as a huge difference when you're able to clearly communicate who you are and the types of couples you serve, and then you show how you serve them, and you do that through written, you do that through the pictures, you do that through the videos, and you show how you serve people and how you take care of people, and then you attract more of those people, you end up with a frictionless operation. You end up with better employees because they are inspired and they want to serve and surprise and delight people and take care of people in the same way that you're doing it. So there is a huge trickle-down effect. And then the biggest piece that your USP impacts here, I think, is the advice that you take. If you go to any of these wedding conventions and you're listening to a speaker, you've got to put it through the filter of like, who is this person? Where are they speaking to me from? Did they just own one venue and it's been in their family for generations and it's been booked since before they remembered and they've just kind of been rinsing and repeating the same thing and evolving as the times go on? Or have they been in the business for only a year and their experience is kind of limited? Or, maybe they are super good with sales and marketing or super good with copywriting. Maybe they come from heavy luxury experience, but they don't come from any more affordable options. So you've got to think about the advice you're being given and kind of cross-reference it with your venue DNA so you can make sure that you're not taking advice out of context. So I hope this has been helpful. If you are interested in downloading the checklist, please go in the description of the video. You're going to see it, link, go ahead, fill it out and get that and use it as a guide and use it as a reference point as you're creating your USP. And hopefully it helps you everything from the marketing, your website, your Instagram, and then, if you're considering purchasing or building a venue, kind of gives you a little filter that you can think, what do I want to do? How do I want to be set up? Which team members? What type of business do I want to own? And then you can build from there and kind of reverse engineer the property that you build and what it looks like and where it is and all those fun things. All right. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you in the next video.
Pardon the interruption, I wanted to take a moment and share with you about WEVA. WEVA stands for Wedding and Event Venue Association, and it is a professional association custom built for venue owners and operators. We felt like there was a lack of resources, community, education, and networking available specifically for our industry, and so we recently started this association, and it's been growing by the day. We would love to extend an invite to you, so please click the link in the description or wherever you're watching this video, and we would love to welcome you into the community.